Today we're joined by Mor, the co-founder and CEO of Agora, a platform to help manage your real estate investments. Bar is an interesting character. Bar actually started off in the Israeli intelligence corps and has went on to found numerous companies. Bar, tell us a bit about your background.
Hi, Zain. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure. Sure. So basically, my background, I'm originally from Israel, from Tel Aviv. And my background is both in tech and real estate. In tech, I served as a commander at 8200 Cyber Intelligence Unit in my military service. In my team, I was a team leader, and my team dealt a lot with research, analytics, and a lot of BI working with complex data. Afterwards, I studied computer science in the academy and worked at the tech space for a while. But for my family, I have a lot of personal relationship with the real estate business. My father is the founder and CEO of a big publicly traded real estate development company here in Israel, building residential, commercial, retail, all over the country, also Eastern Europe as well. So since early age, I always was exposed to this industry. I always knew that I personally want to do something that really brings this, two amazing, very interesting worlds of mine, technology and real estate together. And this is how I got to really, start my venture, my company, Agora.
And you've done a few companies, right?
Yeah, I have some sort of a background when I was younger, doing in parallel to my military service. I had my first company, and the idea back then was it was about, I think, 7 or 8 years ago. Yeah, back then people always got stuck without a battery in their phone. And every time, people around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, they search for a place to charge their phone. And so I've developed a product. It was a charging station. It came branded with a very powerful battery. And I sold it to restaurants, bars, coffee shops, and so on. And they actually brought it to their, to the people that came there as kind of this service, kind of like a service that I'm providing. And so this was something that I did. It was very nice.
So, Bar, if I understand, you were doing that in parallel whilst you were full-time in the Israeli intelligence corps. How did you find the bandwidth to do that?
Yeah, so I like working. I'm kind of like addicted to work. And my commander back then, he was, we had a great relationship, him and I. He knew that I'm, the first one to come in the morning and the last one to leave in the evening. So it was fine, he gave me full flexibility doing, if I had to go outside and come back. So we got it covered.
So it's not like you had to cut your hours, you had to keep working hard, but you had to basically burn the midnight oil, as they say, working on other ideas and ventures. Now,
yes, that's true.
So tell me,
but I think this is how it is.
Tell me a bit about what you learned, if you're allowed to talk about it, in the Israel Intelligence Corps. I know the 8200 division has quite a reputation. And I understand there's a lot of people from there who go on to start great companies. Maybe you can tell the world a bit about, the type of people that are there and what skills they learn and what companies they go on to found.
Yeah, of course. I cannot talk about a specific, of course.
Of course.
But I can say that, coming as a teenager, just finishing high school, 18 years old, to a place that when you're going through a very hard training.
And you mean physical training, course, right?
Sorry?
And you mean physical training when you say hard training?
Actually, mine wasn't that physical. In 8200 intelligence, most of it is not physical. You only have 1 month of physical training.
Okay.
And then it's very dedicated to the specific role that you're going to perform. And so whether this is research, reading a lot about specific subject, and knowing how to code, they have an amazing coding, courses in the military. And you find yourself studying for 4 and 5 months. Every day you get up at 6 in the morning, you go to eat, and then from 8 in the morning to about 10, 11 o'clock in the evening, you just study, you do tests, and so you get a lot.
All right, so it's basically brain training.
Definitely, yeah.
Did you find your did you have any development experience prior to being in the intelligence corps?
No, and actually, during my military service, I personally didn't work in coding.
Yeah.
And my role was much more of a research, analytic, and seeing like this big picture coming from different kinds of data sources and trying to understand and come to conclusions from it.
And how do you think how has that helped you today? And when you went on to found your company, did you bring people from the same division with you, or did you sort of hire across the board?
Yeah, so it's funny. First, I think that it helped us a lot. I was a team leader. I had 5 soldiers, and so you see yourself. You know how to manage a team. You know how to manage tasks, a roadmap, how to achieve specific milestones you need to achieve. And so I think all these kind of things, I wouldn't ever had this experience without the military service. As far for the people, so the person I started the company with, Lior, he was my replacement as team leader in my team. He was my soldier for about a year. And we've also, our third partner he was a development team leader in the military, and his team developed products that we used in order to do research. So he's today the CTO of the company. And only 3 months ago, we brought Lior's replacement that was also in my team, but I only had we had only 6 months together, and then he continued with Lior.
Wait, so you hired your replacement, then you hired your replacement's replacement. Is that what I'm hearing?
Exactly. Yes.
Great.
Correct.
So that's a good hiring strategy. You keep hiring your replacement at the firm, knowing that they've gone through the same training and processes that you have. That's intriguing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So tell me about the overall Israeli tech ecosystem. I've experienced it personally, competing with a lot of Israeli firms when I was running my own startup, and I found, in our industry, in the advertising industry, we had firms like Iron Source, Supersonic, and others, phenomenal teams, and the teams that came out of the Israeli ecosystem were really focused on AI. They had such a great technology stack, and they were ruthless about execution. I'd say what they lacked in UX and user experience and design, they made up for in spades when it came to the power of the technology and the actual infrastructure that existed. We found, maybe in our case, and some of the Western competitors, lighter on the AI side, heavier on the design side. But that was something that we observed, and I've also observed as an investor. Israeli startups and CEOs from the Israeli ecosystem seem to have a deep tech background. Has that been your experience? Could you tell us a bit about what you're, being there on the ground, what you're seeing?
Yeah, definitely. So I think I can relate to that. I think again, it all comes from this thing of being in the military, and Israel, we are like a small island. All the other places that surrounds us, and we cannot really travel there. We cannot take the car. All Israel between south to north, it's 420 kilometers, and between east to west, 120 kilometers. So it's a tiny, tiny dot, and we have to be, creative. We need to be ambitious. This is something in the nature of the culture. And so I think the combination of this together with the strong, really training that people are going through in their military right after they finish the high school, this what really creates the technological advantage and capabilities that that we have in the Israeli tech ecosystem.
Yeah, and I think the ecosystem is the right word to use there. We've seen ecosystems spread throughout the world. In Silicon Valley, you've got the Stanford connection, the Berkeley, and then from that, great tech startups were there. And, this is where Silicon Valley is where, the semiconductor industry started. In the Israeli industry, I've also noticed a lot of innovations and technologies that work well in the military capacity or even automotive or manufacturing actually do make their way across to other sectors, even like PropTech itself. So, it's interesting. What does the future look like in the Israeli tech ecosystem? Is it concentrated in Tel Aviv? Is it sort of spreading more globally, and there's clusters of Israeli alumni, you could say, that work closely together, or is it more geographically focused?
Yeah, so this is a great question, actually. I think that, what we are seeing in the past, 2 to 3 years, and we'll see it continues in the future, is a couple of things. First, we see Israeli CEOs and companies have much more both ambition, and they really, if back 5, 7 years ago, they would have sold their company for 200, 300 million, $500 million, and this was like an amazing big thing. Today, especially today, with everything that you see with the SPAC in the stock market, you see more and more Israeli companies going big, not selling, continuing, raising more capital, doing a couple of $1 billion worth IPOs, and I think we'll see this trend continues. I can also say, I personally lived in Santa Monica in Los Angeles for a couple of months when I participated in an accelerator program designed especially for Israeli early stage startups in Santa Monica. And after a couple of months, I also moved to New York to move there. And in both places, you see this ecosystem, how you get there, and immediately you can get connected to other Israeli entrepreneurs, and they help you get connected to other people. So I definitely see this trend expanding from Tel Aviv to places like LA, San Francisco, New York, and so on.
Yeah, I see that too. I see also there's certain investors outside of the venture capital landscape, you could call it family offices, who really focus on investing back into the Israeli tech ecosystem. And I think that's what was missing previously, was this capital. And it would also say the lack of big exit opportunities conditioned maybe the entrepreneurs to sell at 300, 400, 500 million. And I think when there is a lack of exit opportunities, you're forced to keep building your company. And ultimately, the best value of a great startup is realized in the later years, not the early years. It's almost like every year that you stay on, you exponentially grow and your valuation doubles or triples. And it seems like some Israeli startups are now seeing that and are realizing and are being conditioned to that. And I think that's really, when you look at the global tech landscape, I started out in London, right? When we sold our company, Vangel, it was one of the largest, we sold it in the US. It was a global company, but it was one of the largest acquisitions in the UK history for a UK founded company. And over time, that's now changing. Now what we're seeing is people are realizing, don't go for that quick exit, even if it makes a great return for your early investor, right? There can be plenty of 10x's, 100x returns, but to get the 1000x returns, you really have to hold on. And that is something that I'm seeing more and more now. And I'd say it used to be a Silicon Valley phenomena, and now it's creeping into Europe. It's seeping into Israel and other tech ecosystems around the world. So I always say there could never be a better time to start a company, but especially now. Now we're coming out of a pandemic with a vaccine that's being distributed. There are so many areas of technology that are waiting to be disrupted, and the world's going to change.